Welcome again. In this episode, we're going to talk about the best way to stay balanced in life, because people have asked me for 45 years, how do you stay balanced in life? In fact, in this episode, I'm going to show you how to take the wobble out of your life, because life is like a three-legged stool. And when we get to the end of this episode, you're going to go, oh my heavens, I've never thought about life in that fashion before. I'm Doug Andrew, and as a financial strategist and retirement planning specialist for more than 45 years, I've talked to a lot of people who are very successful financially. They have a lot of financial assets or wealth, but they're sort of bankrupt in other dimensions or areas of their life. And so I began to realize that happiness and contentment, peace, does not really come from the accumulation of things. And as I began to interview many of these people, some worth 10 million, 50 million, a few worth a billion, some are only worth a half a billion, shucky darn. There was a big difference because some of them were out of balance. Maybe they were accumulating their financial wealth at the expense of their health. And then later in life, they were spending all their wealth trying to regain their health, which is really sort of silly. Sometimes they accumulated their financial success or wealth at the expense of relationships with their spouse, their kids, their grandkids, or their God. And they were wondering, what was all that for at the end of the day? So I began to look at true or authentic wealth from a three-dimensional standpoint. So I would like to illustrate and explain what I mean by these three dimensions of authentic wealth. So watch as the artist draws what I'm talking about here, because there are three dimensions of what I call true or authentic wealth. When we say the word assets, what kinds of things do most people think of first when we say the word assets? They usually think of their house or their real estate or their cash or stocks or bonds. Those are just material possessions, though. Those are just things. When I ask people, what are the most important assets that you value, that you cherish, that you possess on this earth, now they say family. Health. My wife has technically died 3 times and come back. We appreciate good health. Our values and beliefs. These kinds of assets involve people, so I call these human assets. They are our core assets. I put these under the foundational assets for abundant living. They would also include your heritage, talents, unique abilities, charitable foundations, and so forth. Now, there's a third dimension of authentic wealth that involves the wisdom that we gain throughout our life. It's our intellectual assets. Now, wisdom is a product of knowledge times what? Experiences. And not just the good ones. I've actually learned more from my bad experiences in life. Maybe you have too. But it also includes your formal education, reputation, methods, systems, traditions, alliances, ideas, and skills. These are the three dimensions of authentic wealth. Whenever I ask anybody, if you had to let go of one of these three categories of assets, financial, foundational, or intellectual, but you could keep the other two, and not only keep the other two, but you could transfer them into future generations, but you had to bankrupt or let go of one of those three and start all over accumulating that category, which one would you let go of? Now, abundant-minded people immediately say, the money. Why would you let go of the money? Because you can rebuild that category using the other two. Most religions on the planet believe that we come to this earth possessing these assets to one degree or another. If you believe in a life after this one, these are the ones you return to your maker, your creator, and report on. Have you ever figured out how to take the money with you when you die? There's no luggage racks on hearses, as the song says. I mean, 2 affluent guys died and went to the pearly gates, and one turned to the other and said, man, how much did you leave behind? The other one said, all of it. We don't take it with us. Isn't it interesting that traditional estate and financial planning in this country seems to focus all of its attention on the least important category in the family balance sheet, the money. So I began to focus with my clients, my family, because clients are like family to me, on balancing their life on all three dimensions. So, in helping people realize that life is like a three-legged stool, and that's why I use the three dimensions of authentic wealth, they began to realize that true, or what I call authentic wealth, is more than just the money. And most people agree with that. But I've noticed that being part of the financial services industry for more than 45 years, a lot of advisors seem to just focus on the money, or even attorneys. They would just sit down and go, okay, how many kids have you got? And they would start dividing up the estate equally and dumping it in their laps and so forth. It created a lot of problems. See, I've always believed that I wanted to empower my children and grandchildren. I wanted to not outlive my money, but that was just the financial. What is the use of accumulating a bunch of money if you're not healthy enough to enjoy it? People say, golly, when you have health, you have everything, but when you lose your health, you only have one wish, and that's to get your health back. And so what good does it do to accumulate a bunch of money at the expense of your health or your friends or your loved ones, relationships with your spouse or your kids or your grandkids or your God? I've seen a lot of people that at the end of the day, they're not happy, even though they could probably spend $10,000 a day the rest of their life and never even put a dent in their net worth or their bank account. So what's up with that? It's because they were wobbling on just one leg of that stool, maybe the money. Money. Now, there are other people who sort of, I have a few close friends in the Genius Network that I belong to that are bodybuilders. In fact, I don't want to mention their names. You would probably recognize them. But their whole life sometimes revolves around just building their body to win some medals. And so they come back and say, did you see these medals? And about 2 or 3 weeks later, they're very depressed, almost suicidal. In fact, the suicide rate among very wealthy people is just as high as among the teenagers, where I'm on a board of directors for teenage suicide prevention, establishing Hope Squads. And I'm going, how come these people have all this money, but they're not happy? They thought happiness was going to come from the accumulation of things, or maybe they worshiped other people or their thoughts, but it was really about being balanced in their life, because 2 or 3 weeks later, these bodybuilders would say, hey, did you see the medals? And people say, yeah, you already showed us those, because their whole life revolved around that one event. And after that, there's nothing left because they were out of whack. And maybe while they were trying to achieve that goal, they ignored their children or their spouse, and finally they were fed up with it, and now they're wondering, was that worth it? I would plead with you to understand that when we talk about true or authentic wealth, it is a three-legged stool. Your health, your social life, your emotional, your mental, intellectual, spiritual, not just the financial. And so many people have come to me through the years to sort of take that wobble out of their life and get their act together. And I'm going to share with you a few of the things that we've discovered that helped empower them to be able to be happy and content, maybe repair some of the damage that was done while they were trying to accumulate money. This is why I believe that it's more important that values are understood before the assets are valued. Then they can be brought into balance and harmony to provide ever-increasing results. When people that had a lot of money would come to me, they wanted to get their life balanced, take the wobble out of their life, and then also many of their children were sort of born on third base and grew up thinking they hit a triple their whole life. They thought they were doing their children a favor by always paying for everything, and now they have an entitlement mindset. So I wrote a book called Entitlement Abolition. But they would come to us to be able to solve those issues and then get their financial house in order. And in other educational episodes, I talk about how I help them establish what I call a family bank. And that's not a chartered bank like down the street, that's a conceptual bank. Look through my library and learn about that. But from a financial standpoint, I do talk about how to balance all of these categories together, but most people came to me through the financial dimension, and then I would switch and show them how to balance everything in their life. So here's an offer. What I would love for you to do is to get a copy of our most recent best-selling book. Is called The Laser Fund. And I don't invite you to these episodes to sell you a book. I'm going to give you this free. All you have to do is go to laserfund.com and you just cover like a nominal shipping and handling fee, and I'll fire this out to you immediately. This is actually 2 books in one. There's 14 chapters on this side comprised of all kinds of charts, graphs, and explanations for the financial dimension. But then you flip it over, and this is for you right-brainers, and this has about 100 pages, 12 chapters with 62 actual client stories. And in the very first chapter that I talk about the 3 dimensions of authentic wealth. So click down here and get your free copy fired out to you, and I'll see you in some other episodes that go deeper into this topic.